Most men barely understand themselves, yet they claim to understand women. Plato never penned those exact words, but if you dive deep into his philosophy with brutal honesty, you'll find that message woven through it all. He didn't write about relationships or offer tips on how to win a woman's heart. Plato was focused on something far more dangerous: the blindness men have to the forces controlling their own minds. Long before men ever chased beauty or bowed to the gentle lure of the feminine, Plato had already exposed the real sickness. An untrained mind becomes the ideal playground for illusion. Remember the allegory of the cave in the Republic? The one where prisoners are chained in darkness, mistaking shadows for reality? They worship those shadows, build their entire lives around them, never realizing they're just reflections, projections crafted by others. But what Plato doesn't say outright, what few ever notice, is that these shadows go beyond politics or society. One of the most potent illusions cast over a man's mind is woman, not woman in her truest form, but the illusion of her. A fantasy. A projection that keeps men distracted, compliant, and emotionally chained. Plato warned us, the masses reject truth when it finally shines. They fight to protect their illusions. And no illusion is more seductive than the belief that women are pure, innocent, and incapable of deceit. That's the stage where men lose themselves. A smile becomes love. A tear becomes sincerity. A simple touch turns into destiny. But Plato would have laughed. To him, this was the behavior of a man still stuck in the cave, refusing to look at the light. He lives in illusions and swears they're real. Plato taught that true wisdom starts when you realize you know nothing. The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. He wrote. Yet how many men define woman based on what she appears to be, rather than what she truly is? How many examine feminine influence with the same intensity they give to business or war? Almost none. And that's exactly why women dominate the emotional world of men without even trying. She doesn't need to scheme or manipulate like some villain. She just exists, and in doing so, reflects the ignorance you've refused to confront. Plato nailed it. The worst kind of deception is the one you play on yourself. Men convince themselves they're rational in love. They're not. They're captives. And the chains aren't on their wrists, they're wrapped around their thoughts. This is Plato's harsh truth. It's not the woman who's manipulating you. It's your illusion of her that holds the strings. You created a false goddess in your mind, and now you kneel to her. She smiles, and you crumble. She pulls away, and you chase. You call your obsession devotion, and hand her your power. But Plato warned, a man who lives in shadows will never survive the light. And still, here you are, convinced your heart is pure, your intentions noble, your love righteous. But if you could step outside yourself, become the philosopher Plato urged you to be, you'd see the truth. You've mistaken your chains for wings. Illusion for truth. Manipulation for love. Plato didn't romanticize the human soul. In Phaedrus, he describes it as a chariot pulled by two horses, one noble, the other wild. The noble one yearns for reason, discipline, truth. The wild one chases beauty, pleasure, temptation. And you, the driver, are constantly struggling for control. This is where most men lose the fight. The moment a woman appears, the wild horse takes over. It drags you toward her laugh, her perfume, her curves, her gaze. And you? You let it. You don't challenge it. You don't resist. You call it falling in love. But Plato saw it for what it really is, spiritual slavery. In the Symposium, he calls love a divine madness, not shared bliss, but a God-sent frenzy. It blinds, consumes, and makes men worship the image of beauty while forgetting what's real. Yes, it's divine, but it's still madness. And unless you master it, you're just a pawn. A slave to moments. A servant of shadows. And here's the twist. Women know this. Whether consciously or instinctively, they get it. They understand the pull they have over an undisciplined man. She doesn't need to hurt you on purpose. She only needs to exist in your mind as the prize. You make her your meaning. Your goal. Your reward. From that moment on, you stop seeing her for who she is. You only see the fantasy you've created. And that, right there, is the perfect trap. Do you know what Plato feared more than war? The soul's corruption. He warned that men who can't govern themselves will be ruled by tyrants, flatterers, manipulators. And who flatters more dangerously than a woman who knows you crave her approval? She becomes the puppeteer. And you, the dancing puppet, trade your purpose for her applause. You think she's playing the game, but the game started long before she arrived. The true game is the war inside you, between the man you could be, and the man who just wants to feel good. And every time you pick pleasure over principle, fantasy over truth, you're the one who loses. She doesn't even have to beat you. You defeat yourself. Plato said the just man never lets lust rule over him. But here you are, negotiating with your emotions like a coward, hoping she'll validate you, complete you. That's not freedom. That's building a new cave for yourself, one lined with golden bars and velvet chains. So let me ask you, when was the last time you truly questioned why you chase women? When did you last wonder if she's leading you to truth or dragging you deeper into delusion? Most men never ask. Because asking takes guts. It forces you to admit you've been wrong. That you've been lied to. That your beliefs about love and destiny are just smoke. And until you do that, until you stand, like Plato's philosopher, and stare into the light, you'll stay a slave. Not to women, but to the idea of women you never had the courage to challenge. Plato knew society was built on stories, myths designed to keep people obedient. And nowhere is that clearer than in the story men are told about women. You're told she's your better half. That she completes you. That she holds the keys to your happiness. But Plato saw through that. In the Republic, he writes that only those who've seen the truth should lead. The real tragedy? Most men never lead their own minds. Let me show you the real structure. Plato divided the soul into three forces: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason craves wisdom. Spirit wants honor. Appetite chases comfort and pleasure. And when it comes to women, most men live entirely in the appetite. She smiles, your pleasure ignites. She pays attention, you feel worthy. She touches you, you come alive. But that's the lowest part of who you are. The part Plato warned must be ruled by reason, or it will drag you into ruin. And this is why women have such terrifying influence over weak men. She doesn't need to challenge your mind. She doesn't need to respect your mission. All she needs to do is feed your appetite, and you will sell your soul for another taste. Like a man lost in the desert, you will crawl on your knees, begging for drops of validation, while she stands over you, holding the water you once had the power to create for yourself. You think I exaggerate? Look around. Men betray their families for a stranger's touch. Men destroy their empires for the approval of a woman who doesn't respect them. Men kill themselves because she left. What greater proof do you need that you are ruled by the lowest part of yourself? And here is Plato's greatest warning, hidden in plain sight. No man is free who is not master of himself. If you have not mastered your appetites, your cravings, your desire for validation, you are not free. It does not matter how much money you have, how many followers you gain, or how many women you attract. If they can break you with a glance, you are still a prisoner. But there is more. In the Laws, Plato argued that the downfall of a city begins when men allow pleasure to rule over discipline. And what is society today, if not a graveyard of men who have sacrificed their strength on the altar of feminine approval? You see it in politics. You see it in religion. You see it in culture. Men bowing, apologizing, submitting. Not to truth, not to principle, but to the fear of losing her. Plato never taught men to hate women. He taught men to see clearly. The woman is not your enemy. She is a reflection of your ungoverned soul. She plays the game because you invited her to the table, blind, desperate, unprepared. But you can flip the board. You can rise from the cave. You can reclaim the throne of your mind. But only if you dare to face what most men fear the most, the truth about themselves. Let me tell you something Plato hinted at, but the modern world refuses to accept. Women test men for one reason only, to reveal weakness that already lives in him. She is not the cause of your collapse. She is the mirror showing you who you truly are when your ego is stripped bare. Plato, in Gorgias, makes it devastatingly clear when he says, "It is better to suffer injustice than to commit it." Why? Because the man who commits injustice proves he has no mastery over his desires. And here is the irony most men never understand. When you chase a woman, compromise your values, betray your mission, and beg for her validation, you are committing injustice against your own soul. You think you're serving love. You think you're fighting for her. But in reality, you are violating yourself. Plato taught that the greatest harmony a man can achieve is to rule himself with reason, to align his actions with truth, not temptation. And yet, look at how society programs you to betray this law. You're told to fight for her, to never give up on love, to prove you're a real man by sacrificing everything for her approval. But Plato warned about this exact manipulation. In the Republic, he calls it the rule of the many by the persuasive flatterers. And who flatters your delusions better than a woman who feeds your ego while you surrender your mind? You see, women have learned, consciously or not, that a man addicted to validation will always be easy to control. She doesn't need to use logic. She doesn't need to defeat you in argument. She only needs to look you in the eye and make you feel like a king, and you'll do the rest. You'll destroy yourself for her attention, thinking you're chasing love when you're actually chasing your own emotional slavery. Plato didn't just talk about the individual man. He warned about civilizations collapsing when men surrendered discipline for pleasure. He saw this pattern in the fall of Athens. He watched leaders compromise principles to please the masses, just as modern men compromise their souls to please women. The sickness is the same. The disease of the untrained soul always ends the same way: collapse. But Plato also gave the cure. He taught that the highest purpose of a man is to pursue the good, to climb out of the cave, to face the light even if it blinds you, even if it burns away everything you thought was real. And here is what most men will never do. They will never dare to see the woman, not as a goddess, not as a curse, but as a mirror. A mirror showing them their undisciplined appetites, their fragile egos, their desperate need to be seen. Do you have the courage to face that reflection? Do you have the strength to stand? Not as a beggar, not as a slave, but as a man who governs himself first? Because until you do, you will always be played. You will always fall for the game, because you refuse to master the player within you. And when you finally see this, when you finally stand in the light Plato spoke of, you will never look at women the same way again. Most men live in terror of losing a woman's favor, but Plato teaches you to fear something far worse: the loss of your own soul. He writes, and the soul takes on the character of the actions it pursues. In other words, if you spend your life chasing validation, your soul becomes weak. If you make her attention your highest pursuit, your soul shrinks into something petty, something small, something unworthy of greatness. Let me make this even more brutal. Every time you bend your values to keep her, every time you silence your truth to please her, every time you sacrifice your mission for her emotions, you are not loving her, you are betraying yourself. And Plato makes it clear: betrayal of the self is the root of all injustice. Why do you think tyrants rise? Why do you think civilizations fall? Because men refuse to govern themselves. Because men would rather serve pleasure than truth. Because men would rather chase shadows than face the light. And women, consciously or not, test men to expose this exact weakness. She pushes your boundaries to see if you'll hold the line. She withholds affection to see if you'll beg. She challenges your convictions to see if you'll betray them just to keep her around. And every time you fold, she loses respect for you. Because deep down, she knows a man who cannot rule himself cannot rule anything, not his life, not his future, not his legacy. Plato described the perfect ruler as a philosopher king, a man who has mastered his soul, a man who seeks truth above all, a man who is unshaken by the games of the masses. If you can look into her eyes and see not a goddess, not an enemy, but a mirror, if you can take back your power, not with hate, not with bitterness, but with clarity, you become what Plato called the just man, the ruler of himself. And the man who rules himself cannot be manipulated, cannot be destroyed, cannot be played. So here's my challenge to you. Stop chasing the shadow. Stop worshipping the illusion. Stop trading your soul for temporary affection. Stand up, look in the mirror, face the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to confront. And when you do, you will never again fear the games women play, because you will have outgrown the need to play at all. If this message lit a fire in your soul, if it shook you awake in ways you didn't expect, don't let it end here. Take a moment right now to like this video, share it with a man who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel. We are building a brotherhood of men who refuse to live in the shadows, men who dare to rule their minds, their lives, and their destiny. Support us by following the link in the description. Join us on this journey toward truth, mastery, and freedom. Because the world doesn't need more chasing illusions. It needs more men who have the courage to see,